July 29th, 1981, Buckingham Palace. The wedding of the century had just ended. 3,000 guests, 700 million viewers worldwide. Diana Spencer became Diana, Princess of Wales, married the heir to the British throne, wore a fairy tale dress, waved to adoring crowds, looked like every girl's dream had come true. But that night, in the private quarters of Buckingham Palace, the fairy tale died before it even began. Sarah Mitchell was a lady's maid at Buckingham Palace, had worked there for 8 years, had been assigned to help Diana on her wedding day, had watched the young bride transform from nervous girl to radiant princess, had seen her smile for the cameras, had helped her out of that spectacular dress, had congratulated her on the beautiful ceremony, and had no idea what she was about to witness that night. The evening started quietly. The public festivities were over. The crowds had gone home. Charles and Diana were finally alone in their suite. Well, not entirely alone. Royal protocol required staff to be nearby, available, discreet, invisible. Sarah was stationed in the adjacent dressing room, close enough to hear if Diana needed anything, close enough to hear everything. Diana emerged from the bathroom in her nightgown, a beautiful silk piece, white, elegant, bridal. Her hair was down, makeup removed, face fresh and young. She was 20 years old, had just married a man she barely knew, a man 13 years older, a man she'd met exactly 13 times before the engagement. Sarah watched through the slightly open door as Diana looked around the bedroom, searching for Charles. He wasn't there. "Charles?" Diana called softly. No answer. She walked to the sitting room, empty. Back to the bedroom. Still no Charles. Diana sat on the edge of the bed, waiting. It was her wedding night, and her husband had disappeared. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Diana stood up, paced, sat down again. Sarah could see her growing increasingly anxious. This wasn't how wedding nights were supposed to start. Finally, at 11:45 p.m., Charles appeared. But he didn't come from the corridor. He came from his private study, the room connected to their suite, the room with a telephone. Diana stood up, smiled nervously. "I was wondering where you'd gone." Charles looked uncomfortable. Just needed to make a phone call. Business. Business? Tonight? Royal business doesn't stop for weddings. But his voice was off, defensive, and Diana, young as she was, noticed. "Who did you need to call on our wedding night?" "Diana, don't start." "Start what? I'm just asking. You're interrogating me. On our first night as husband and wife." Diana's face fell. "I wasn't interrogating. I was just... You were gone for almost half an hour." Charles sighed, ran his hand through his hair. "I'm tired. It's been a very long day. Can we just go to sleep?" Sarah watched Diana's expression change, from nervous excitement to confusion to something like dread. "Sleep? Charles, it's our wedding night." "I'm aware, and I'm exhausted. But I thought we would... isn't tonight supposed to be..." Diana trailed off, embarrassed, hurt. Charles wasn't even looking at her. "We have our entire lives," he said. "One night won't matter." He walked past her, into the bathroom, closed the door. Diana stood there, alone in her wedding night nightgown, 20 years old, rejected on the most important night of her life. Sarah saw her sit back down on the bed, saw her wrap her arms around herself, saw the beginning of tears. This was wrong. This was all wrong. But it got worse, much worse. Charles emerged from the bathroom 20 minutes later, in his pajamas, face washed, ready for sleep. He climbed into bed without a word. Diana was still sitting there, on her side, waiting. "Charles," she said quietly, "can we talk?" "About what?" "About us, about what just happened." "Nothing happened. I'm tired." "You should be too." "But it's our wedding night," Diana said again. Her voice was breaking now. "You keep saying that as if it changes anything." Diana turned to look at him. "Doesn't it? Doesn't tonight mean something?" Charles stared at the ceiling. "It means we're married. It means we did our duty. Now can we please just sleep?" Diana lay down, turned away from him. Sarah heard her crying, quiet sobs she was trying to muffle. Charles heard them too, and did nothing. Just lay there, staring at the ceiling, until Diana's crying finally stopped. Sarah thought it was over, thought the terrible wedding night was at least finished. But at 2:30 a.m., Charles got out of bed. Quietly, carefully. Diana was asleep, exhausted from crying. Charles walked to his study, closed the door softly. Sarah hesitated. She should go to bed herself, should give them privacy, but something felt wrong. She moved closer to the study door. It wasn't fully closed, just slightly ajar. And she heard Charles pick up the phone, heard him dial, heard him wait for someone to answer. "It's me," Charles said quietly. His voice was completely different now, warm, soft, intimate. "I know it's late. I needed to hear your voice." Sarah's blood ran cold. She knew that tone. That wasn't how someone talked to a secretary or a friend or a colleague. That was how someone talked to a lover. "The wedding was fine," Charles continued, "exhausting. All those people, all that performance, but it's over now. Finally over." A pause. He was listening to whoever was on the other end. "No, she's asleep. I made sure she took something to help her sleep. The doctor said it would be fine. Just tonight." Sarah felt sick. He drugged his bride on their wedding night? "I couldn't do it," Charles said. "I tried. I thought I could. But when it came down to it, I couldn't touch her. Not when all I could think about was you." Another pause. I know I have to eventually. For the heir, but not tonight. Tonight was supposed to be ours. In my head, tonight was always, going to be yours." Sarah realized she was shaking. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening on Princess Diana's wedding night. "I love you too," Charles said. "Nothing about today changes that. She's the wife. The official wife. But you're the one I love. You'll always be the one I love. Camilla." Sarah knew without being told. Charles was talking to Camilla Parker Bowles on his wedding night, while his 20-year-old bride cried herself to sleep in the next room. "I have to go," Charles said. "She might wake up, but I'll call you tomorrow, I promise. This changes nothing between us. Nothing." He hung up, sat there in the dark study for a moment, then stood up, returned to the bedroom, climbed back into bed beside Diana, and went to sleep, like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just called another woman on his wedding night. Like he hadn't just told his mistress he loved her while his bride slept 3 feet away. Sarah stood frozen in the corridor. She'd witnessed something terrible, something that would destroy Diana if she knew. But Diana didn't know. Not that night. The next morning, Diana woke up disoriented. Sarah was there, helping her dress. Diana looked exhausted, pale, fragile. "Did I sleep?" Diana asked. "I feel strange." "You were very tired, ma'am. The wedding was exhausting." Diana looked around the room. Charles was already gone, left early for meetings. I don't remember much from last night." Sarah didn't know what to say. Diana looked at her wedding ring. "This is it now," she said quietly. "This is my life." And Sarah heard the sadness in her voice, the disappointment, the fear. This wasn't how brides were supposed to feel the morning after their wedding. The next few weeks were torture to watch. Charles remained distant, cold, absent. Diana tried everything to reach him, wore beautiful clothes, planned romantic dinners, tried to be the perfect wife, but Charles was never really there, was always thinking about someone else, always on the phone with someone else. Diana started noticing, started asking questions. "Who keeps calling you? Where do you go in the afternoons? Why do you seem so far away?" And Charles would get angry, defensive, dismissive. "You're being paranoid. You're too demanding. Can't I have any privacy?" Diana began to crumble, lost weight, stopped sleeping well, developed the bulimia that would plague her for years. And Sarah watched it all, watched a young bride deteriorate, watched her try desperately to save a marriage that had never really existed, watched her husband continue his affair while barely pretending to hide it. 3 months into the marriage, Diana found a photograph. In Charles's study, in a book, a photograph of Camilla with an inscription on the back. "All my love, see." Diana brought it to Charles. "What is this?" Charles barely glanced at it. An old photograph, a friend. A friend who writes "all my love"? "Diana, you're overreacting." "Am I?" "Because I feel like I'm going crazy. I feel like there's something you're not telling me. I feel like you're not really here with me." Charles sighed, annoyed. "You're being dramatic. This is what I was afraid of. You're too young, too emotional, too jealous." "I'm not jealous." Diana's voice rose. "I'm your wife. I'm trying to understand why my husband seems to love someone else more than me." The words hung in the air. Charles stared at her, and for a moment Sarah thought he might tell the truth, might admit to the affair, might give Diana closure, but instead he said, "You're hysterical. You need help," and walked away, leaving Diana holding the photograph, knowing something was wrong, but being told she was crazy for believing it. Years later, Diana would discover the full truth, would find letters, phone records, gifts, would learn that Charles had called Camilla on their wedding night, would realize the marriage had been doomed from the start. But on that first morning, waking up from her wedding night, Diana still had hope, still believed she could make it work, still thought love might be enough. Sarah knew better. Sarah had heard the phone call, had heard Charles tell another woman he loved her, had watched him reject his bride and return to his mistress, all in the first 12 hours of marriage. Sarah left royal service in 1985, couldn't watch Diana suffer anymore, couldn't be complicit in the lie. For 30 years she kept the secret, never told anyone what she'd heard that night. But in 2011, after William and Kate's wedding, Sarah was contacted by a documentary filmmaker, someone researching Charles and Diana's marriage, someone who wanted to understand what had really happened. Sarah was 70 years old by then, retired. Living quietly in Cornwall, she agreed to an anonymous interview. "I was there on their wedding night," Sarah said. "At Buckingham Palace, I heard everything. Charles called Camilla at 2:30 in the morning, while Diana slept in the next room. He told Camilla he loved her, that Diana was just the official wife, that nothing about the wedding changed what he felt for Camilla." The interviewer was stunned. "He called his mistress on his wedding night?" "He called his mistress on his wedding night," Sarah confirmed, and Diana never knew. Not that night. She just knew something was terribly wrong. She woke up the next morning feeling strange and sad and like her marriage was already over, and she was right. It was over before it began. The documentary never aired. Palace lawyers shut it down. But Sarah's testimony was recorded, preserved, real. In 2017, William learned about the interview. Someone sent him the footage. He watched it alone, late at night, heard Sarah Mitchell describe his parents' wedding night, heard how Charles had called Camilla, how Diana had cried herself to sleep, how the marriage had been a sham from the very first night. William called Harry immediately. "Did you know about this? About the wedding night?" Harry had known. Diana had told him years before she died. "Mum said it was the loneliest night of her life," Harry said quietly. "She said she knew then, that Charles would never really love her, that she was just playing a role in someone else's love story." William felt rage building. He called Camilla on their wedding night, while Mum cried herself to sleep, and then he married Camilla anyway, after everything he put Mum through. "That's why I couldn't go to the wedding," Harry said, referring to Charles and Camilla's 2005 marriage. "I couldn't watch him marry her, not after what he did to Mum, not after knowing how it started." William understood. Both brothers understood now. Their father had never really been married to their mother. Not emotionally, not faithfully, not honestly. From the very first night, Charles had been with Camilla, and Diana had spent 15 years trying to compete with a ghost. July 29th, 1981. Diana's wedding night. She was 20 years old, wearing a beautiful nightgown, waiting for her husband, her fairy tale prince. Charles disappeared for half an hour, came back cold and distant, rejected her, refused intimacy, made her feel unwanted and undesirable, then waited until she fell asleep. Got up at 2:30 a.m., called another woman, told that woman he loved her, said his new bride was just the official wife, and returned to bed like nothing had happened. Diana woke up the next morning feeling strange and sad, feeling like something was wrong but not knowing what, feeling like her marriage was already over, and she was right. It was over before it began. The fairy tale had died on the wedding night, killed by a phone call to Camilla, by a man who married one woman while loving another. Some marriages are doomed from the start. Some brides cry themselves to sleep on their wedding night. Some grooms call their mistresses while their wives sleep 3 feet away, and some secrets stay hidden for decades. Until someone like Sarah Mitchell decides the truth matters more than loyalty. Diana deserved better than July 29th, 1981, deserved better than a wedding night spent alone, deserved better than a husband who loved someone else. But she got Charles. And Charles had already given his heart to Camilla, long before he gave his hand to Diana. The wedding night just made it official, made it clear, made it real. Diana was the princess, but Camilla was the love, and no amount of fairy tale dresses could change that.